to the Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Well, the Silver Rush 50 Ultra Marathon didn't go as planned. Kind of slipped through a little bit, and I'm going to go through some of what happened and kind of correlate to life and some injuries that you may also have experienced and how I troubleshooted my injuries. Part of doing an ultra marathon is troubleshooting, and I went through all of the troubleshooting things that I could think of during the race. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. So to start from the beginning, the Silver Rush 50 Ultra Marathon is located in Leadville, Colorado, at a baseline altitude of 10,200 feet. We went out in June, if you follow this podcast, and did a training weekend. And we came out on Thursday before the race on Saturday. And this time we tried to change things up a little bit. We stayed down altitude, down to 8,000 feet at about 30 minutes away in a little town called Buena Vista. Some people call it BV. Some people pronounce it differently, but Buena Vista comes out for me. Mainly because it is a little bit more plant-based cuisine friendly. And a lot of good little restaurants with a lot of vegan options there. And so we decided to stay down there and then drive up for the race. And so we did. We got there on Thursday, relaxed. Friday, did a packet pickup up at Leadville, came back down to 8,000 feet, and Saturday morning went up for the race. We noticed when we got up to the Leadville and 10,000 feet, you could tell a difference just walking around the 2,000 feet. But we'd been up there a month before, and you know, it is what it is. You're never going to be fully acclimated coming from sea level. And so knowing that I was going to breathe a little harder, not a big problem. The race is really unique in that it starts at the base of what they call a tubing hill. So imagine a very steep sled riding hill, and 800 people stand at the bottom of it. And when the gun goes off, everybody runs up this very steep, rocky hill. And the two people that get up there the first man, the first woman, get an actual ticket or coin into the 100-mile race. So some of the young buckaroos sprint up for that, but the rest of the people try to hike as fast as they can up this very, very steep hill. And then you come around and you wind around a little bit, and it's about 5 miles before you start into the actual climbing up mountains. The race course goes basically over, it's an out and back course, so out 25 miles, back 25 miles, same route. And it goes over 2 mountain climbs, and the 2 mountain climbs take you up to about 12,500 feet. The first one is a little bit more gradual, kind of some riverbeds, jeep trail, some switchbacks. It's a little bit more varied before you get above tree line, and then you go down, and then you go through some more technical single track, narrow roots, rocks type terrain before you start up another climb. And the second climb is pretty much about a 5.5 mile straight up type climb. There's a couple long switchbacks, but for the most part, you're just grinding up this mountain. And when you get to the top of both of these climbs, you kind of have a gradual descent back down to about 10,000 feet. And so you go up and you come down, you go up and you come down. And that's the course. On the way back, it's probably, a little bit more towards the downhills or a little bit more steep, just because of the way the terrain is. So I took off. Felt good. It was 38 degrees at the start. I was freezing. My hands were frozen. I was putting my hands on my jacket, and start up the first climb after about 5 miles, and felt really, really good. I was using poles, trekking poles. Most people do. Some people don't. And wound my way up the first climb actually good. And the one thing I did notice is when I got to the top, and you're so happy to get all the way up to the top, And then you quickly realize, oh, I'm at 12,300 feet. This is, a little bit less oxygen up here, less oxygen molecules, as I talked about previously on a podcast. So you don't want to dilly-dally up there. You want to kind of get down. And the road down from the first one was somewhat of a Jeep road. It was rocky, but not too awful technical. What I noticed right then and there was that I was stiff. I'd been climbing up at an angle, and when I got up to the top, I just felt like I couldn't kind of get upright. Didn't think much of it, working my way down. And I was actually glad when the downhill kind of leveled out a little bit and I got more on my Florida flat ground for a few seconds before heading down again. And then it went off on the technical trail, but it still didn't feel that bad. Wound around a couple aid stations and then start up the second climb. And again, the second climb, a lot of rocks. If you think about a washed out riverbed that's going up, it's any place between probably 13 and to the top 24% grade. So it's steep, unrelenting. You see people standing, looking. You see a lot of people struggling back where I was. Also saw the winners of the race, or the leaders, come back through at that point, which is a little demoralizing, even though they are 40 years younger than me, maybe 35, but they're coming back through and they're kind of dancing on these rocks. But the rest of us are kind of struggling to go up this mountain. And I was still motoring along. I was actually passing people head down. Back in the day, I used to cross country ski, so I just kind of had my mind in this mode of I'm just going to cross country ski my way up to the top of this mountain, and then I'll have one down and go back down to the aid station. It won't be long before I'm halfway. So that climb is someplace between 18, that 18 was you left an aid station, and about mile 20, someplace along there, we'll say 16 to 20, whatever that 5 miles would be. Well, when I got to the top of that climb, I immediately noticed that my lower back was really, really tight. And, I kind of did some wiggling around to kind of stretch it. But what happened when I started down was I started getting what I'll describe and we'll talk about a little bit is called sciatica. And sometimes a lot of people have experienced sciatica, and that you get a pain that kind of comes down from your low back, over your butt, down your back of your leg. It can go down the back of your leg. It can go down the side of your leg. It can go in, and then it crosses over to the front of the leg and go into the big toe. So depending on where it starts and how big of the nerve is affected and where the nerve is affected is kind of the symptoms. And sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out if you have sciatica or a muscle pull, because what happens is when that nerve gets irritated, it causes a muscle spasm. And in my case, the muscle spasm was a little bit in the back of my leg, but for the most part, it was in the muscles that came in the right behind my knee and around my knee into my shin a little bit. So it was making my knee unstable. And that was really bad when you're trying to go down a steep hill. So I'm trying to go down a steep hill, but I got this muscle spasm going on, and I'm having trouble putting weight on my right leg. A couple times I stopped to kind of stretch it out or do a few things. But again, you're on the side of a mountain, so it's not like you can lay down in soft green grass and do a bunch of stretches or anything like that. So, wiggled around a little bit. This is also a timed event, so you have to get to certain aid stations before you get cut off. So there wasn't a whole lot of time to, rest or sit down. And when I've had this in the past in training, if I could, do some stretches on the ground or walk around a little bit, it often will let up. But again, this kind of started back after that first climb, so it was building for, a couple hours before I really noticed when I went downhill, my knees started to give out. So anyway, long story short, it made me have to walk, and then it had to, then I became walking slower, and now I'm on technical rocks, and so I'm trying to go down these rocks that are slipping and sliding, and every time I hit, my legs feels unstable, but it also hurts, and I'm walking slower and slower and slower. All I had to do was to get down and get back up to the next aid station. The reality of it is I was walking so slow, I timed out. So at the turnaround, I missed it by, a minute or two, and I timed out, and my race was over. at that point, it's like, okay, so what do you do when you time out? You're in the middle of nowhere. Luckily, I timed out at the halfway point, so there was a shuttle, and I saw this bus, and I thought, wow, it's, that's pretty lucky. If I'm going to have a bad race and time out, at least there's a little shuttle bus right here, one of those transverse, the kind of mini camper type of looking vans. And it's like, well, that's just going to haul us out this Jeep road, and that'll be great. Well, it turned out that wasn't the shuttle van. The shuttle bus, which the school bus, was about 3/4 of a mile up a hill around to the side. So after sitting down a little bit and having a Coke, I had to walk up 3/4 of a mile to get onto the shuttle bus. The irritating part was sitting down for 10 or 15 minutes, having a Coke. I get up and this muscle spasm was really starting to go away. So it was irritating that it was still there a little bit, but it was fine for me to walk up this next hill to get to the shuttle bus. And I really wasn't that sore afterwards. So I got 25 miles in, timed out, race is over, and I don't feel that bad. So that's irritating. Good news is I'm not injured permanently. I don't have a lot of muscle soreness, so the recovery is not too much. But my race didn't end the way that I wanted to. So I thought I did all the things as far as troubleshooting. I made sure I had plenty of nutrition. I was hydrated. Those are the first things when your muscles start to go. It's because they're not getting enough fuel. I got down off altitude, down to the 10,000 and didn't really change anything. I even stopped and tried to stretch along the way. But again, I stopped and stretched for a little bit after it was really irritated. But I thought I did all the right things. And it was until the race was on Saturday. It wasn't until Monday morning. It's like, what I could have done is I could have stopped back at mile 18 when it was first starting to flare up a little bit and give myself 5 minutes in a chair or on the ground there to let it go away. And maybe that would have changed the course of things. But I was so concerned about time and getting ahead of the clock that I didn't want to stop, and I kept pushing it, and I kept pushing it, and I even pushed it harder uphill probably than I needed to, again, thinking that I want to test myself for the Leadville 100 coming up, so I wanted to push the uphills to see if I could maintain pace, which I did, but at the cost of irritating this nerve. So didn't turn out the way I wanted to, but again, more altitude training, more hill training, more technical rock training. I didn't get injured because I didn't go all 50. I wasn't that sore, so my recovery is good. My toes are fine. I tested out a new pair of shoes, Lone Peak Ultras that I really liked. So that's a go. My nutrition was good. I might have been a little bit low on the nutrition, but I was certainly making up for it as I went. So that all seemed to be good and good learning experiences. So back into training. Leadville 100 is on. It's in 3 weeks. And, it's now troubleshooting. So I've been on the treadmill at an incline and had the sciatica come back a couple times, doing some things to troubleshoot it. And I've kind of come up with the biggest problem is hip flexor tightness. And one of the other things that I didn't do correctly was, most of the time I'm active every day. I'm up moving around, but we tried to save ourselves a couple days before the race, so I was sitting around more. So sitting tends to make the hip flexor short. Airplanes make the hip flexor short. Driving in a car makes the hip flexor shorten. So I kind of set myself up to be in a rather restricted pattern before I ever started. And so that has to change. You spend all this time getting ready and training, and then the last 48 hours, you kind of drop the ball thinking that you're going to rest and your body's going to be doing all this healing and you're going to just wake up all loose. And that's not the case. And, if I have any takeaway to share, motion is lotion. And I've said it before on the podcast, but I have to say it to myself. Motion is lotion. So sitting around is not going to make me less stiff. I have to be up and doing mobility. So what are hip flexors? Obviously, when I'm sitting here, I'm sitting at a right angle. I'm sitting and my knees are straight out for me. So the front of my legs, the muscles that connect my legs to my pelvis and my spine are shortened, at 90 degrees. So if you think about the muscle, if this was my thigh and, this is my lower leg, or this is actually my spine, and this would be my thigh. These muscles are shortened, and I'm trying to elongate when I'm trying to run. If you look online, one of the first muscles that'll come out is psoas. The psoas muscle connects from your spine down to your femur bone, and so it is responsible for you to be able to pick your leg up to 90 degrees and to bend and flex your leg. So as I sit, I'm collapsing, and that muscle can shorten passively. There's another muscle right in that inside the pelvis called the iliacus that also connects there. The big muscle of your quadriceps muscle, so the big muscle on the front of your leg attaches to your hip, and also attaches down to the knee. That shortens. The muscle on the side of the leg, tensor fascia lata, that muscle on the side can shorten. There's a muscle that goes from the outside of your hip to the inside of your knee called the sartorius. It's a skinny little muscle, but it's for rotation. That muscle can shorten. And when those muscles shorten, it stresses the back to try to get yourself upright. And I do believe that, as you're running, as you're sitting, those muscles can shorten and tighten. And if they're not addressed, then they can cause your back to be strained, and you're pulling on your low back. And then little nerves that come out of your spine get impinged. The most common one being L5, so the vertebrae at the most bottom, S1, where your sacrum and your spine come together. That's usually where things, you get into trouble. There's a big kind of a fan type nerve that L5 fans out and sends nerves down your leg. And so depending on what nerve is pinched, and in my case it was around the knee, that was really where the muscle spasm was the most for me. Sometimes it's very hard to diagnose, even myself, I'm like, pushing around on my leg, and you feel a little muscle tightness. And I don't know if I get more hopeful that it's a muscle rather than a nerve. But you feel some tightness because that muscle was clenched for so long, it becomes sore. It's like, so is it a primary muscle issue, or is it because the nerve caused the muscle to spasm? And really pretty sure that when I got back and started troubleshooting and started doing some hip flexor stretching and mobility type work, it really improved. One of the things that you can do besides stretching, and again, when we stretch something, we're trying to pull something and we're kind of working against the muscle. They're active release. So rolling on a ball, foam roller, or even it's called tempering, where you put a heavy object and you kind of move around and you put pressure on the muscles where they insert or are tight. It can cause the muscle to release. There are TENS units you can use that you can put on the muscle to help relieve the spasm that actually cause the muscle to contract and relax, and the nerve then will let go. But the reality of it is you have to fix the mechanical problem and to get yourself kind of straightened up. The other thing that you can see when you look online and go, a lot of times the Google machine, people talk about ChatGPT, everybody, puts in, depending on what you search, depending on what you browse, things come up. And there's a tremendous of information about back pain and what causes it and all the different exercises that you should do, and all the postures that you should have. But the reality of it is we're all unique individuals with our own little flaws and our own little bends here and there, and, right to left differences, and what you've done over the years, your occupation, how much you sit, how much you stand, how much you twist. So we've all grown a little different over time. And I'm guilty as anybody is trying to correct and let's make the perfect skeletal posture of how it should be. And sometimes that can fight against you as well. And it's backfired against me trying to maintain a posture that I should, textbook posture. But the reality of it is I'm not a textbook. I don't have textbook anatomy. So making myself in a shape that is not necessarily what's natural for me might not be to my benefit either. So, if you've suffered from these pains in the back, and I mean, chronic back pain is one of the biggest reason why people go to the doctor. It's one of the biggest procedures. People have injections, people have spine surgery. The reality of it is most back pain, most sciatica pain, nerve pain can be treated without surgery. It's a matter of taking time to figure out where the problem is and how best to treat it. Some people have tight hamstrings, some people have tight quads, sometimes there's muscle imbalances, sometimes there needs to be strengthening. Sometimes there needs to be active release. But these combinations of things almost always result in people being able to get back and do what they wanted to do. And even in the worst of situations, there are people that have had, terrible disc herniations that are very successful power lifters or very successful gymnasts. So we're all prone to certain injuries. We all have certain weaknesses, and you have to be aware. And so, again, my lesson was that I am just not somebody that can just plop down for 24 hours and try to rest and come up feeling great without having some mobility work done. And it didn't help starting out 38 degrees at the bottom of a mountain, So, I mean, it's one thing if you're 25 starting out the bottom of the mountain, but at 62, at plus, I need a little bit of a warm-up. So note to self, learned a good lesson, learned a valuable lesson before the big dance. My big dance is the Leadville 100 in 3 weeks. That's the main race. And I want to be able to take all this troubleshooting that I've learned so far and apply it to that race. And hopefully things will work out in my favor. It's easy to say, and maybe you're thinking this as you're listening, why not just quit? Why does she put herself through this? And I thought about it too, going up one of the mountains. I thought about why can't I just enjoy the pretty wildflowers? When you're going up some of these climbs, you enter just above tree line fields of beautiful wildflowers, yellow flowers, just all over, fields of them, naturally, yellows and purples and some oranges. And of course, the skyline with the mountains, the Rocky Mountains and the snow, it is absolutely breathtaking, literally and figuratively. You meet a lot of great people. Everybody's kind. Everybody's positive. One lady says, all you got to do is make it to the bottom of the hill. You'll be fine. And it's like, yes, all I have to do is make it to the bottom of the hill. It's easy to spiral and think, oh, there's nothing I can do. I should just throw in the towel. This is not for me. But I don't believe in that. I believe that we're better off looking at things that we can control versus things we can't control. I believe that is one of the axioms of rehab program and AA is, the things I can control, the things I can't. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but we often jump to list the things we can't control. Can't control the weather. I can't control the course. I actually chose the course. I knew what I was getting myself into. It's a mountain course at altitude. But I can't change it once I'm there. I can't change whether it's muddy. I can't change the weather. I can't change altitude, not living in altitude. So there's a variety of things that I can't change on that day, and I'm not in control of. But there are things that I am in control of, and stopping to think about what I can control. I can control my shoes, whether I use poles. I can control my nutrition, my hydration, my pace, my cadence. I can control what races I choose. Focusing more on what you can control than what you can't often leads to a better outcome and lets you to keep troubleshooting of what's going on. In the nutrition world, I often, hear people, my family doesn't want to eat what I want to eat. There weren't any restaurants. There was absolutely nothing I could eat. I have trouble after 6 o'clock. I just deteriorate then. And a lot of that comes down to starting to list what you can't control rather than what you can control. Your family's your family, and you didn't choose them, but that's your family. And just because you changed your lifestyle doesn't mean they have to change their lifestyle. You hope they put up with you, but nevertheless, your response to them is your response. So you know what you're getting into, but you do have control over yourself. You do have control over what you eat and making your own, and putting your foot down and choosing what you want to eat, making your own meals, not eating it, if you're at the Chick-fil-A drive-through with your niece. You don't have to order something. It's tempting, but you don't have to order something because that's not your game plan. You're very much in control of what you tell the Chick-fil-A person at the window. But if you start saying, we're here and I don't want to, you can make this, it's so easy to make these stories that you don't have any control and you don't have any choice, you have any option. If you can switch around and start looking at all the different choices you have, and how would you troubleshoot all these things? And every race I do, there's some part where I have to troubleshoot, whether it's nutrition, your legs start to hurt, whether it's hydration, whether it's the technical aspect of the race. There are things that you have to troubleshoot. More often than not, there are things that you didn't think of that you were going to have. Things present themselves. It's only by doing them that you learn. I didn't have a great outcome, or I didn't have a good outcome. I didn't have the outcome I wanted from Silver Rush, but I learned from it. And I learned more troubleshooting, more control things that I can do in the future to help me. And that's really what it comes down to, is that we're all building and we're all on a journey, whether it's your health journey or it's your race journey. You're learning to add things into your toolbox on how you can troubleshoot and how you can achieve what you want to achieve, whether it's a healthy lifestyle, a certain weight, a certain cholesterol, get yourself off of medications, or achieve certain goals. It's that process that you have to embrace and learn to troubleshoot and have different ideas. Often we just think of the goal and we don't think of all the things in between, and that's a problem. The other thing that, happens is you start to have a backup. You have a backup consolation prize, so to speak. And we spend time thinking about the consolation prize or how we might handle our failure when we don't put all our energy into our success. So it would be easy to start to think what happened, in my future race at the 100. It would be really easy. What happens if my back starts to hurt? How am I going to handle? Where's it going to start to hurt? When's it going to start to hurt? Should I brace for as soon as I start up the first big climb? Will it be at a certain spot? I can't predict any of those, but what I can do is troubleshoot, get myself stretched out, have my nutrition, and keep doing the things that I can and focus on the positive and work each mile as I can, and then deal with things as they come, as opposed to dwelling on the things that I don't necessarily have control over, and it's just going to slow me down. So it really comes down to your overall outlook and what you focus on. But if the more you learn in your day-to-day life how to spin things into a more positive light, and maybe just changing the wording. You're not lying. It's not a fake it till you make it, but it is what is actually going right and what works for me, and how do I build upon that as opposed to what's gone wrong. I gotta just switching the tide a little bit. I've had some emails about supplements and would this be good and would that be good, and longevity. And there is a chemical that our body produces. It actually regulates our ATP production, which is our energy production. And it actually kind of functions as our cellular fuel gauge, and that is AMPK, or activated protein kinase. So you see the word AMPK, and take this supplement and you'll increase AMPK, or this promotes AMPK, and AMPK is associated with longevity. Well, what it is basically a very basic enzyme that is hooked on to everything from thyroid function to getting rid of cancer cells, maintaining your metabolism, dictating whether you're hungry or not, muscle glycogen production, glucose breakdown. So it's involved in energy. It's involved in recovery. It's involved in keeping our cells healthy. It's even tied to Alzheimer's as far as regulation of beta amyloid plaque production or actually elimination. So when the AMPK enzyme malfunctions, bad things happen. And as we get older, that is more likely to happen. So obviously, people are looking for hacks or supplements or pills that might improve AMPK function, which would be a good thing. But the question comes, what can we do naturally? And it turns out that exercise actually increases your AMPK. So when you exercise, you're burning energy, you're ultimately decreasing inflammation, you're using glucose, you're producing ATP, and you're generating this AMPK chemical. And so AMPK is best maintained through exercise. And just like that 24 hours before the race of me being sedentary did not help me, being sedentary through life does not help you as far as your AMPK production. So you can say, if I want to turn off my fuel gauge, my cellular production, all you got to do is be sedentary, and this thing's gonna be in trouble. The other thing that we talk about is mTOR, target of rapamycin. We know that when people's mTOR levels are up, it's associated with increased risk of cancer. And if you decrease those mTOR levels, you decrease risk of cancer or decrease cancer. Again, exercise helps to decrease those mTOR production, and so does a lot of plant-based nutrition. The other thing that increases AMPK production is, and especially when it comes to cancer cells, are certain foods and nutrients. It always comes down to there's hacks with medications and some sort of chemical alteration. We can do exercise and we can do nutrition. And it turns out that there are a lot of phytochemicals that also help to increase the production of AMPK. And these are found in foods that we readily eat, things like resveratrol and quercetin and genistein and hespergillin, things that are found in things like grapes, garlic, onions, apples, citrus fruits, soy products, all the things that have been shown to decrease cancer a variety of different ways, also helps to increase this AMPK, which ultimately helps metabolism and prevents some of these lifestyle diseases. So on the other thing, it's like, so why do I do what I do? Again, I like to go run long races to troubleshoot, to try to solve problems, to potentially identify problems that relate to real life and how to work through different problems. I learn about physiology with nutrition. I learn about my mechanics and muscular function, and I can take this and apply it to real world scenarios in my practice and mobility. A tremendous amount of people suffer from back pain, so it's kind of good to have a little bit of firsthand knowledge how to get into something, but also how to get out of something. So I find that very, very helpful. It's also nice to be in a beautiful environment, running up the mountain when you get to the clearing above tree level. There's just fields of yellow flowers and purple flowers and snow-capped mountains, and it's just a beautiful sight to see. And I wouldn't miss it for the world. And I feel very grateful to have the opportunity to have the body to let me do those things. But it does require a lot of training, and it's going to keep requiring a lot of training, not only the running and the strength training, but the mobility work to be able to do those things. But it's what I like to do. And so that's what I'm trying to make the most out of for as long as I possibly can. The last thing that I wanted to make note of as far as with nutrition, there has been some studies come out looking at an increase in lung cancer in people that don't even smoke. And why do people get lung cancer? And a variety of things. Obviously, not one thing causes cancer. It's not a genetic abnormality. If you have a predisposition with genetics, you need something to light that fire, or something to turn on that abnormal protein production. So genetics and hereditary doesn't occur in a bubble. Nutrition, environment, and other factors certainly play a role. And one of the things that has come out recently is looking at exposure to highly heated foods, and how much time people are spent around highly heated foods. We know that when you take a potato and you make it into a potato chip, you generate acrylamides because of the high temperature. And a lot of people think when they eat fat-free or low-fat potato chips, or baked potato chips, I should say, that is better. And they really have more or a longer exposure to these high temperatures, and they generate acrylamides. And as a side note, your dogs that eat kibble, there's a lot of acrylamides in kibble food, and that's one reason why kibble is not so good for dogs even, because of the risk of cancer and the generation of acrylamides. But getting back to people, high temperature, even with vegetables, generate the acrylamides and the polycyclic amines, but there are volatile organic compounds that are associated with cooking meat at a high temperature and grilling. And so grilling with charcoal, grilling with wood, those chemicals come off and expose the meat and generate carcinogens. And people that are around that or eat more of that actually have an increased risk of lung cancer. One of the things you can do is, obviously not eat those things or spend less time around it, but cooking at lower temperatures, it appears to be that, gas or electric is much cleaner than cooking, at the high flame type of situations. If people are exposed to charcoal, you want to make sure the charcoal is ashen beforehand. Aluminum foil is another thing people sometimes try to avoid cleanup, so they'll cook vegetables in aluminum foil. Those high temperatures will actually pull the aluminum into the food and make that more carcinogenic. So again, our meat that has been on the grill and all these barbecues. And of course, when you do processed meats, you have nitrosamines as well that's generated at the higher temperature. Even the ones that have more of a natural nitrate to them generate these chemicals. If you take the food and you put it on plasticware, you're going to leach some of those, or they're exposed to plastic or stored in plastic. You're going to leach more chemicals in plastics. If you eat off paper plates, those are coated with a Teflon type product to keep the things from soaking in, so that can make it worse. Fast foods that are wrapped in foil containing these Teflon coating papers make things worse. So you can see how different things add up with regards to nutrition and the possibility of increasing a risk for cancers just because the gases. So, even people that work in such an area are much more of at risk than people that don't. It's even been said that pregnant women should really not spend much time by an open grill because of the potential to inhale the carbons and cause issues. So, there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we do have control over. And one is exercising to maintain our AMPK, maintain our fuel gauge so that we can avoid lifestyle diseases and keep our muscles intact. And the other is choosing a plate that is rich in phytochemicals and nutrients and minimally processed and cooked in such a way that it's not really high temperatures. So a lot of things to think about. And, when you go to your picnic this summer, take a covered dish, take your own food, you know where it came from, and don't forget to get your exercise in. If you'd like to learn more about our practice, go on over to drdulaney.com, DOCTORDULANEY, and check out the practice. We have multiple levels of membership that you can join, dietetics consultation, as well as coaching both from myself and Addie, our registered dietitian. And then we do full membership where we take care of all your health care needs. We also do consultative practice. If you have a health crisis and you're not sure about the direction you should go with some of the things that have been offered, we do offer a consultative service that will go through your medical workup and the treatments that are available and give you all the options and help you weigh in what's actually best for you. Thank you, as always, for listening. If you like the podcast and you enjoy it, make sure you share it with friends. Go on over to iTunes and give us a good review. Thanks, as always, for listening. Good night.